On this week's episode, we talk all about college.
Yes, we talk about our college experience from applying to graduating and hopefully some fun stories along the way. So stick around. Hi, and welcome to Rare with Flair,
the podcast where two 20-somethings with the same rare disease are out here living our best life. I'm your host, Casey.
And I'm your host, Cassandra.
Well, hey everybody. We have both been traveling again since
Once
this podcast.
Again, we have been traveling.
I went to the beach with my family. You went to visit your brother. I know we had, just kind of low-key family bonding type of trips.
Totally.
Nothing too wild, but it was a fun time, and now we're back.
Back in the booth, as we say.
Yeah, back in our booth. We don't have a booth. We're not that fancy.
We're really not. Casey's slightly fancier than me because she's got like soundproof walls up in her closet. I just record wherever I can.
I had that before we ever started the podcast for voiceover stuff. And hey, I was like, I have this closet. I might as well use it. So we hope it sounds good. We talked all about the audio in our last episode if you didn't hear it. And we're hoping.
Ooh,
that,
what a good plug.
What a good plug. Thank you. I try. So if you haven't heard our last episode about how we made the podcast, sound is very important to us. Our sound engineering is very important to us. You know what, though? Before we get into this episode, I had the urge to say something that I haven't said in a really long time.
Oh, please tell me.
I'm just going to take the floor right now and say it. You know what I love more than anything?
What do you love, Casey?
Thank you for asking. I love a good review on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, I knew it. I knew you were going to go there.
You knew it? Am I that predictable?
No, I was thinking, like, what haven't we said in a while? Like, we haven't asked for reviews.
We really haven't said it, and I think I've gone, like, a 10-episode streak without mentioning it. And like we always say, podcasts are so hard to get the word out there about. It really is word of mouth, basically is the only way. And reviewing, it takes 5 seconds to do, but it helps our show so much. So if you like at all what you've heard, just take a quick minute to review us on Apple Podcast, and that's what gets our show seen by people who might not otherwise see it.
Here, I will give you a template. Rare with Flair is my favorite podcast. It's so much fun. Send. Done.
That's all you have to write. That's all you
5
have to
stars.
write. Really? 2 sentences. How hard is it? How hard is it? If someone wrote that exact thing, I would actually, it would make my day. No, I actually really like your unique thoughts and words. But if you do want to just use the template Cass just wrote for you, how easy is that?
How easy. Really doesn't take more than 2 minutes. And it really, really helps us. We wanted to try and set this challenge forth on our very, very first episode that we released a little over a year ago. Yes. Wipes tear from eye.
Wiping.
This is an audio medium. I have to describe what I'm doing. We wanted to see if we could reach 100 reviews. It is arguably quite a lofty goal, and we have been stagnant at about 60-something reviews for quite a while right now. And we incentivize this by telling you that Casey has this amazing voice that she uses to speak to her dog, and it's honestly the funniest thing I've ever heard. And I often think of words in your dog voice specifically.
Oh, thank you.
Like,
that means a lot
gosh,
to me.
You say it in a specific way.
I didn't even realize.
Or just like shouting like, gosh, like, but you do it in a way that will always remain. And if you want to know, you could just leave us a review.
You know, at this rate, we might get 100 reviews and hear the dog voice in like 2025. But we didn't realize how much of a lofty goal that was actually when we asked. We've learned later that actually... We've learned that we actually have quite a lot of reviews, so we are grateful for our reviews. We just want more, because we're selfish.
We just want everyone to be able to find our podcast.
Yeah, it just really helps us out. It's an easy way to help us out if you like what you hear.
For sure. And maybe one day we'll do a real commercial. Whoa.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Wow.
So, today, though, we're excited. today we're going to talk about, like you heard in the opening, we're going to talk about college and our college experiences. You know why? Because it's back to school time. We just entered August. It's back to school time. I remember when I started college, I really, really wished, or when I was starting, I really, really wished I had someone with low vision to talk to about it. And I didn't have really anyone. And I'm hoping if anyone is listening that might be college age or even younger who might plan to go to college one day, you could maybe, I don't know, get some advice from this episode, or at least just know you're not alone.
Right. And college isn't for everyone. And besides, things change a lot between years. Like, I think Casey and I even have different experiences because, when did you start going to college? What year did you enter college?
I started college 10 years ago this year. I started in 2011.
Yeah, so I started college in 2015, and even then, between those 4 or 5 years, there was still, a decent amount of difference. So, even if you're starting college now, it's going to be different maybe than our experiences. And we also know that college isn't for every single person, but we hope that if you do decide to go to college, that this is maybe fun, or if not, it's just a fun listen, because we really enjoy talking about our college experience. And it's something that, we were talking as we were planning this episode, this is something that we may not have known about each other because, we've gotten to be better friends as adults. I didn't even know Casey until she was almost done with college.
That's so true, actually. I didn't think about that. And we did touch on college in our school episode, which was episode 5. But I think in that episode, we spent a lot of time on elementary school, middle and high school. And then we kind of put college at the very end and we didn't have time. And we were like, college is such a unique, different experience.
It totally is.
Where you're studying something more specific than just regular school. And it's just totally different. You're more independent. You're more on your own. And so, not everyone goes to college. It's a personal decision, but we thought we could do a whole hour on this. Absolute easy.
Who doesn't like talking about their college experience, though?
Oh, yeah. Well, we both had a good time. We both had a good experience.
We had a lot of fun. There were some highs, there were some lows, but, it was college, and there's nothing else quite like it.
And I'm excited to learn about your college experience because Cass and I majored in two completely, basically polar opposite majors. But I'm always super interested to hear what other people are doing. What's a day in the life like for that kind of major or this kind of major? I'm just interested, even forget the disability part, even just the perspective of what your major was like is interesting to me.
Yeah, and same to you. Casey was a liberal arts, and I was in engineering, and so those are just completely different. And I could not imagine doing some of the things and taking some of the courses that Casey did, and probably likewise.
No, I can't imagine. Absolutely likewise. Are you kidding? I can't imagine.
Oh,
which is so funny because we're so similar, but
we have a lot in common, but you guys, if you heard our favorite things episode, you'll see we have a lot in common, and we are also pretty different. So I think that is also what helps us get along really well. But before we talk about our college experience, we kind of wanted to touch on the pre-college, what a lot of what we have here in the U.S., the vocational rehab services tends to call the transitional period, which is the last 2 or last year of your high school, which is usually if you are planning to go to college, when a lot of students will try to decide what they want to study, where they want to go, and all of that. So, how did you ever have to think about what you wanted to study in college?
Yeah, so I studied musical theater in college, and I really never had to think about I thought about a little bit, maybe took 5 minutes to think, is this what I actually want to major in? But it just made sense. That was the only thing I had ever done. I started doing theater when I was really young, and I did it. I never stopped once I started. I did it all the time, summer, school, no matter when it was, I was doing theater. And so when I went to college, I was like, this is the thing I'm good at. This is the thing I do, and it just makes sense for me to do it. So what about you? You were a software engineer.
Yeah.
So what about you?
So I studied computer science and engineering. That was the name of my major. What I actually ended up having on my transcript is so much longer than that because I had to pick a specialization, and I got a minor in math. So, like, it's long. But I also, like, concentrated in game design, which is super random. And it's really funny because I don't actually do any of those things anymore in my current job. But it was really great to study in school. But I always knew I wanted to work kind of in the field of technology. You know, I kind of grew up mostly in the 2000s, and you know, as my family started adopting to technology, it came so easily to me. My parents bought like an iMac when I was like in elementary school, when I was in like 4th grade, and I was amazed by it. And I like, it was all very intuitive to me. I just very much understood like how to use the computer, and I'm actually pretty patient with computers, although I often joke that I hate computers. But like, I have good like problem solving skills. I always really liked math, so I thought that would be a really good fit for me. And like my mom was the one who pointed it out. Like I got like my first touch phone, and I figured out how to enlarge the text. She was like, "Wow, that was so easy for you. You should study this maybe."
Cass has taught me how to use all my accessibility features. It doesn't come as easily to everyone. Like, it just comes so easily to you. And I think a lot of people enter college not really declaring a major yet, and that's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. But for us, clearly we both just always knew what we were going to do. And I think that's cool. I think it's nice that we both had passions. But I wanted to ask you about like the application process for college, and like how many schools did you apply for, and what was that process like for you?
Right. So the spring of my junior year of high school, I decided I wanted to stay in state. I knew that going in. And so I toured 4 schools. So 4 pretty local schools. The furthest one, it was like an hour and a half away from where I grew up. And I applied to 3 of those schools. And then I got into all of them, but it was, for me, a matter of, like, seeing which one gave me the most financial aid. But I kind of already really knew that I wanted to go to Ohio State. I went on a college tour when my brother was in high school, and I was in 8th grade. And I remember being on that tour, and I was just so amazed, and it's very an urban campus, and it's right in the middle of the city of Columbus, and it's not like a college town. Like, Columbus is very much a city on its own without the university. But it was so, like, cool and exhilarating for me, and so I kind of knew I wanted to go, and it ended up working out that way, that, like, they gave me some good financial aid. How can I say no?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I wanted to talk a little bit, when I was thinking about this episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about staying closer to home for college, because we both did, and how we both had independence in college. We both did move out of our parents' house. But I think I had some judgment for staying close. And I think my senior year of high school, there was this mentality of everyone saying, I got to get out of this town. I got to go far away. And I felt
sounds
judgment.
Like a punk song. Got to get out of this town. Anyway.
It does. For me, I wanted 2 things. I wanted to major in musical theater, not just theater, which is a different concentration. And I also wanted a Bachelor of Fine Arts, a BFA, instead of just a BA, Bachelor of Arts, just because it's a little more specific. And I was okay. I was like open to the idea of going. I didn't want to go like a plane flight away for college, but I was open to the idea of going a little further away. But my college in my city was the best school in like within the few hour radius for it offered musical theater and a BFA, and that's actually kind of rare in this area. There is a private school that offers that nearby, but I wanted to go to a public school. So basically what I'm saying is, if you want to stay nearby for whatever reason, even if you don't have a good reason, it is not a thing to feel shame about. I think you'll still get the independence in college that you need.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did. My college was 30 minutes away from my parents. How far was yours?
Yeah, so it was in Columbus, where I actually currently live now. So it's about an hour and a half away from where I grew up. But it was really fine for me. I thought that was the perfect distance, that I could still spend time and not feel like I needed to go home every weekend. But my parents could come up and visit. Sometimes I could go and visit them. meaning they would pick me up and bring me. As a reminder, we do not drive because we are blind. But I really liked being close. A big deciding factor in that was, we've talked about this before, we have a rare disease. I have pretty significant chronic illness. I had IBD when I was inflammatory bowel disease since I was 15, and I knew I wanted to stay nearby. I didn't want to relocate all my doctors and the whole thing, but I wanted to be close to my parents. They had been my primary caregivers for a long time, and until I learned how to take care of myself, which I did, I'm very independent, but I just, it was really great to have them nearby and have that community.
I agree. It's you got the freedom of leaving without having to fully leave. And
exactly.
I felt that way too. And so, yeah, I only applied to that one school. University of Memphis is where I went. I applied there. And then once I got into the school, I had to audition for the musical theater program. Ooh. I just sang and acted and danced and did all that stuff. And I remember, I want to say this since it's disability related, I remember at the audition, I had this interview process and I told them, if you've noticed that my eyes are moving, it's an involuntary thing called nystagmus.
Oh,
because
girl.
I told them because I had been so burnt in the past from people making comments about me not making good eye contact or me not having good stage presence because of my eyes and thinking I was being shifty or nervous or whatever.
Yeah, anxious.
And so I told them, and I think one of them said, yeah, I was kind of wondering about that. I'm glad you let us know, or something like that.
That's great. Look at that self-advocacy skills.
The self-advocacy that I had at 18. I was ready to go in there and do, and I was really nervous.
So
I remember telling them, you can't really notice it from the stage, though. When I'm up on stage, it's not as noticeable. I've had more comments about it in theater than in everyday life.
Yeah,
so.
No, I hardly ever get any comments on it, just being, existing in life, but it makes a lot of sense, because, you're up there, and your whole body and your eye contact is part of that, but, yeah. I mean, that's great, though, you definitely had those skills, and speaking of advocacy skills and prepping for college, let's talk about disability services, and how we knew going into our respective schools and going into college that we were going to make use of disability services to some degree. So, as soon as I had decided and I had, officially become a student there, or before I even graduated high school, I remember going and meeting with a disability services counselor and kind of talking through what my possible needs might be. And I ended up having to, I changed some things about that after, taking some classes and realizing, oh, you know what, I think I'll need this, or maybe I don't need that. But it was really good to get established early on, because, that way, I was in the system, and I could decide what it is that I needed for myself, because that's a big part of college and independence. What about you?
Yes, I definitely went to go meet with the Student Disability Services before I started school, and at their front desk they had a Build-A-Bear in a wheelchair with a hearing aid in.
That is so cute.
It was really cute. And I met with them, and they told me, all the stuff that I could take advantage of in their office. They allow you to come take tests in their office. They allow you to use the CCTV in there, which is a closed circuit television. You can put papers and books under it, and it blows it up for you to see it better. They were willing to make some accommodations, enlarging papers, that kind of stuff. The main thing that they gave me, though, that I liked is they gave me a sheet of paper. Wow, I love that it was a sheet of paper and it wasn't electronic, because I think now it would be electronic. But they gave me a sheet of paper to give to all of my professors on the first day of class that just went ahead and explained my disability. It explained that I might be using a monocular in class and all this kind of stuff, so that I still talked to them, but it was just an official piece of paper, I am officially disabled and need these. And also they provided note takers for me as well. So in your classes, you can get another student to take, as they're taking notes for themselves, they can share those notes with you. And so the disability office absolutely gave me a lot of really good tools. I don't know if I used all of them to my full advantage.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, what were the accommodations that you ended up using for most of your classes?
So, yeah, I did use note takers for all of the classes that used the board. And the reason I say that is because I took a lot of dance classes, singing classes, acting classes, where obviously I wasn't visually having to do much. But I did take a lot of gen eds, as they call them, sciences, Englishes, and also a lot of theater classes, actually. You have to see the board. So, like, music theory, script interpretation, theater history, theater management. Like, we had a lot of classes where it was, like, visual. So, I did take some of my tests in there, and I also didn't take some in there, and I don't, at this moment, remember, like, what made me choose which to do that on. I really don't remember having, like, a set thing. I think with each class that came, I kind of, like, decided what I needed for each class on an individual basis. But what about you?
Yeah, so I will admit that my first year, I didn't really take use of that many, at least my first semester. I didn't actually use as many accommodations as I ended up using the next 3 years. And we talked about this on our school episode, but part of that was, like, my own insecurities, and part of that was just, seeing how college was and being, like, a bit naive to that. But for sure, I took all of my tests there. I mentioned this previously, but I took one calculus quiz my, like, freshman year, and I, like, out of the disability services office, and I failed it, and because I couldn't see, actually. And it was kind of totally my fault for not taking advantage of that. So from then on, I took every test in disability services, and I did use the CCTV. It was funny because, like, for such a big school, the CCTVs were still, like, the same ones that I had in the early 2000s, like, going through school. It's so funny because it was just a massively clunky monitor, but it worked. It was effective, and I really, really needed that for a lot of my exams. Whether it was, like, some computer science, like, fundamentals theories and lots of different kinds of math courses, I needed to see a lot of small numbers, and so I really, really made use of that CCTV, and I would usually turn it on the inverted contrast mode, so, like, you can change how it appears on your big clunky screen, and I usually had to, made it show as white on black, and that was really helpful for, taking long exams. Definitely took tests there. I got double time as I took the tests, which was really helpful because it does just kind of take us longer to read some things.
I feel like your major was probably more visual than mine.
It was definitely more visual. And a lot of
you had math.
Right. And a lot of, like, my later courses were project based, so it was just, like, turn in this project. But most of the time there were still, like, theory and exam components to them, and so it took time. It really, really, really helped, and I seriously don't know how I could have done that without it. But I would talk to all of my professors at the beginning of each semester. I would kind of give them the rundown, like, hey, it's me and my dog. We're going to be in your course. I after my freshman year, I asked professors to reserve a seat in the front of the room because I literally cannot see from any other seat.
But you can't see from the front. You gotta let the people know. You can't see from the front either. You can only see from the front with a monocular. I can see from the front with a monocular,
but I can't see from the second row with a monocular.
Gotta clarify. We don't want people thinking you can read the board from the front row here. No. Don't be getting any crazy ideas, y'all.
Yo, we still are blind, as a reminder.
No, we blind. Blind.
So I would also sometimes take the note taker function, which was usually really helpful, and a lot of my materials ended up being electronic, but I had to just make sure that they were going to post their notes online, or I would take the note taker. So those were sort of the things that I would do. And seriously, I don't know how I could have gone through college without them.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then let's talk about O&M as far as getting around the campus. Now, we both went to fairly big public schools, although your school is much bigger than mine. Like, your school's massive. But my school was not small by any means either. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, about, like, finding your way around. My mom took me to campus before school started. She did that in high school with me too, where we would just like walk. I went to a big high school, so we went to the campus, we walked around. And it kind of helped, although I will say my first week of college, I was still getting really turned around everywhere I went. It was just like such a big adjustment. I wasn't super independent until I went to college as far as like finding things and walking around. And so it was a big thing for me. And my roommate, Audrey, who actually was the same major as me, really, I mean, I couldn't have gotten through it without her because I would just follow her a lot of the time. I would just kind of be her shadow. But I remember getting lost on the way to a rehearsal once, and they were like, just listen for the fountain. Do you hear water? If you can get to the campus fountain, then we can tell you where to go. And because we had this big, like fountain in the middle of the campus. And so I did get lost a few times, but we had this, like, system, actually. It was really cool. At night, we had these, like, these students that would drive golf carts, and they would... If you, like, called ahead, they would come pick you up and drive you anywhere on campus. And I used that my freshman year, especially at night, because I lived on campus my freshman year, and then I lived off the next 3 years. But that was helpful. So if you have anything like that at your school, I say take advantage of it if you have any kind of help like that. But what about you, as far as, were you getting lost getting around?
Oh yeah at the beginning. So my mom helped me too. We went a couple of times and we walked around the buildings that I figured I would need. So our campus in general, there was the business buildings for people studying various business fields. There were like some of the music and theater buildings and the arts. They were like on the east side of the campus and on the south side, like all kinds of sciences and liberal arts. And the engineering was sort of in like the northwest part of the campus. And so most of my classes, like a lot of my math classes were kind of scattered around throughout different buildings, but most of my core courses were in the engineering buildings. So it was a matter of being able to like find that. And in general, I take two directions pretty well, but I definitely got lost. Like, Ohio State has its own zip code. It's 43210, which I find the funniest fun fact.
I love that.
Because college students don't have time to remember their zip code. I lived on campus my first year as well. And it was like, it was an experience, but so a couple things I did. I ended up taking use of O&M through, I believe, the state. And so I had a guy that I worked with a few times. We even took the city bus a couple times. And so I think a lot of that was really helpful. There was one area in particular that was difficult for me to get around, which is on our campus, they call it the Oval. And it's this big green space with a lot of buildings, like pretty much an oval, a lot of buildings around the Oval. And whenever I had a class there my first year, I would get really nervous because with the trees, it was really hard to navigate, and there were a lot of crisscrossing paths, and I wasn't ever sure where I was going. But with some good O&M, I ended up being able to figure that out. And one thing that we had on our campus that I made use of a ton was paratransit. I've talked about paratransit in a couple episodes ago, but campus paratransit, since there were a lot less people using it an entire city, was pretty reliable. And you could call, and sometimes they could pick you up in 15 minutes. They could take you within a 3-mile radius of the campus, and they were really great. It was free. I used it a ton, especially when I lived off campus to get to my morning classes. A lot of time, I would sleep in until my class started. So, so they would pick me up and take me to campus a lot of those mornings. But,
that's great.
But yeah, paratransit was the bomb. But I did walk a ton when I was a student. I walked a lot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. We were in shape as students back then. But yeah, it is true that kind of most of your classes are, depending on your major, are going to kind of be in the same few buildings, because your major doesn't leave those buildings that much. But at the same time, you're going to end up probably walking pretty much the whole campus within the 4 years that you're there or more. So take me through. I'm very curious about this, actually, super curious. Take me through a typical day in the life of
Okay.
your college career, because I want to know what it's like for other majors.
Yeah. So I got to pick my schedule. I picked it every semester based on my needs at the time. So sometimes I had more evening activities, so I would try to get done earlier in the day. When I was a senior, I had my classes start way later because no one has time for that. I was like very much a night owl, and I still am, so like I preferred to get to a class like that would start at like 10:30 as opposed to 8 a.m.
Yeah. Oh wait, I thought at first you meant 10:30 p.m.
No.
Okay, 10:30. You were like, I'm a night owl, so I took a 10:30 class, and I literally thought you meant like a night.
So brutal.
I was like, wow, your college really had it all. You had classes starting at 10:30. Okay,
no,
I get it.
10:30 in the morning. But
in the morning, that sounds nice. Yes.
Yeah. So like so I lived on campus my first year, and then I was actually in a sorority in college, and so I lived in our sorority's house for my sophomore and junior years. So I feel like that, to me, living in my sorority's house was very quintessentially college. So I feel like
definitely.
This is where we'll start, is like I would wake up in the house.
In your sorority house. Love it. I love this already. Like, it's very Elle Woods of you.
I really loved our house. We had a beautiful place, and it was really, really big. So there were about 35 women that could live in there.
Oh, wow.
It was
awesome.
big.
That's so fun.
It was really fun. It kind of just felt like a big sleepover sometimes.
Big sleepover. Yeah.
Yeah, but so I would roll out of bed, like, as late as I could, put something on. I know a lot of students are really into like just dressing in athleisure. I always tried most of the time. Even if it was just like jeans and a t-shirt, I usually was like somehow trying. And I would wear makeup, I think, every single day.
Me too.
I really liked doing, I still like doing that, and so like, kind of rare to find that. So I would usually try and take care of my dog really quick before paratransit came. I would try and like shove some sort of breakfast into my mouth. Usually that entailed cereal. I think my senior year, when I was in an apartment with some friends, it was like I had this egg thing that I could like beat an egg and I could put it in the microwave in a minute, and I had an egg. So like I made like
you
a
and your
breakfast.
eggs. I feel like it's an ongoing theme. Your egg love.
My egg love. I loved eggs.
Your egg love.
And then I would get taken to my first class. Something related to computer science, sometimes a gen ed. I didn't have a lot of gen eds, actually, because I had a lot of credits transfer from high school, so I didn't ever have to take an English course in college. But, like, sometimes it was, like, fundamentals of computer science, which, like, was really cool and wild, even though it's not information that I use anymore. Of just, like, how to, like, data structures and how to organize data, and
you're already losing me.
Absolutely cool and wild, but like, yeah. Anyway, so after that, in general, I would go to Starbucks. I spent a lot of my college going to Starbucks.
Like the on-campus Starbucks?
Nope, I would walk a little bit off campus to go to Starbucks. Usually would take like 15 minutes. I didn't mind the walk. I placed my order on my phone, pick it up. Sometimes I would sit there and study until my next class or work on a project. I would go to another course, midday, like try to grab some sort of a lunch or go home and eat something, because in our sorority's house, they would make lunch and dinner every weekday. And that was part of our rent / dues, was paying for some food, which was really, really awesome. So I'd grab some lunch if I could. If not, like, I'd try and snack on something, go to another class, work on some projects, maybe go home, take a nap. And then when I was for I think my sophomore and junior years, a little bit of freshman and senior, I was in chorus in college, actually. So that was like a fun elective that I did too.
Love that.
Sometimes in the evenings I was involved in an on-campus church, so sometimes I'd go to like a small group. Oh, sometimes it was like a sorority event that we had going on, like a chapter meeting that we had every Monday night. And so a lot of that, and then like after that I would either like try and hang out with people, study, do homework, work on a project. And working on a project usually involved like coding something.
Oof.
So for some class, but it was really fun. Like, I really, like, I look back on it and think fondly about being in college, and like, I feel like I never knew more than when I was in college. Like, I keep joking that as an adult, I've lost so much knowledge.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true for me too, actually.
Yeah, but I think that was in general how a lot of it was. Like, sometimes I'd be like more busy than others, like most students, for like a midterm or coming up. Or like, I would like occasionally have to like, I would procrastinate my work, or like my coding project wasn't coming together, and so like I would force myself to wake up early to finish it the day before it was due. So like, or the day that it was currently due. So, you know, a lot of that, a lot of like push and pull, a lot of like trying to get an internship, which I think we'll talk about later. But yeah, that was college. That was really it.
I love that. I did not have like the sorority experience, so I think that's fun to hear about. Typical day for me, I would wake. Yes, I'm like you. I never took an 8 a.m. class. Couldn't do it.
You never did?
Do it.
I did. Not once. I did have to take an 8 a.m. And it was 5 credit hours, you guys, every day.
No.
It was bad.
So usually I would always usually start at 9 a.m. and I would go to my classes. And then I had my typical classes, but then I also had lab hours, which were these things, we all had to do them. And then also I had to do extra for scholarship hours too. I think I had to do like 80 or 100 a semester or something crazy. My brain is fuzzy on it, but basically a lab, it was wild. It was either costume shop, lighting lab, set design, or publicity, I think were the 4.
Is so wild.
And so I was like sewing costumes, Cass. Like, please, like, I am not equipped, but I was. Like, I was literally like sewing a costume. I was also in lighting lab. I was up in the catwalk, like walking up high in this catwalk, and we had these huge lights. We had to hang over the side and hang these lights.
This sounds so amazing, but also completely different.
It was not blind friendly, like even a little bit. And then every single night for like 3 hours, I think it was 7 to 10, we had rehearsal for whatever given show we were in, because we were always in a show. It was kind of like, there were like 6 shows, I think, a year or something. My brain, sorry y'all, it's been 10 years. If anyone is listening to this that went to college with me and they're like, you're getting this all wrong, my brain's fuzzy on it. But like, yeah, we did like 6 shows a semester, and if you didn't get cast in any of them, there were always like extra things going on that you could get cast in. There was always an opportunity to perform. And we had like a main stage, a black box, like different theaters in our theater building. So anyway, I was always rehearsing at night. And also during lunch, I forgot this, I'm kind of backtracking to lunch, but during lunch, we typically, I think it was once a week, we had this thing called a lunch box, where we had to go eat our lunch and watch random performances. And it was usually like grad student directed stuff, but it was always I want to do my one-man show in the lunchbox. Okay, you can't, or whatever. So that was cool. It was like an opportunity to like perform some of your stuff. And then I would nap, but oftentimes I would nap in the theater building on the benches, because I didn't have time to always go home. Like, I was kind of there from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, like in the theater building.
Wow.
And so, because I was like, taking normal classes. And then we also had to do strikes, which is like when a show ends, you have to take down the entire set and everything. But we had to do it for every show, whether or not we were in it or not, and it was all day long, and you could not go, or you would get demerits and like be kicked out of the program eventually.
Gee.
You had to go, and it was all day, so like you could miss it to take a class, but they had your schedule, and they knew when you were in class, and if you were not in class, you had to be at the strike. So it was crazy. So it was just like really time consuming, I guess, more so than like I don't know, but you know what's weird is my health was better in college than it was in high school. Like, the high school schedule was worse for me. Mm-hmm. Even though college was so busy, I still was able to kind of do my own schedule. And, like, starting school later with like at 9 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. was such a change for me and made such a difference for me.
Yeah.
That really, like, it was helpful. I think anyone listening to this, if you're going to college, choosing your own schedule is a game changer. Like,
yes.
It's just amazing. So
yeah,
that was
same with me. I did a lot worse in high school and the period right in between high school and college. So I think that in general I did do better with like my physical health. So it was a lot easier to balance the day because some days were heavier than others, and I could like it was super flexible and it would change semester to semester. And I think that was like some of the excitement about it was like, you know, like again, like in my senior year where I could have like, you know, Mondays I didn't have classes or however it was. I don't even remember at this point anymore, but
I know.
Sometimes like you can schedule in a specific way and like have a lot more free time. Actually, I think I didn't have class until like the afternoon on a lot of Mondays. So this is a sort of another question, but I feel like it's sort of related to a later topic we'll be discussing. But I never worked until the spring of my senior year. I never had like a job while I was a student, like at the same time. Yeah. So it was a very low key job that I had when I was with that semester and the following summer. So I was able to do it, you know, very, very part-time, like maybe 10 hours a week, but I did a lot of that work on Monday, so that was really helpful.
That's nice, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of our happiest and some of our crappiest moments. What were some of your, like, worst? Let's start with the crappy and end on a happy note. What were some of your worst times in college?
Worst times in college. I think like the worst time in college, I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to just talk about it again because here we go. My junior year, everyone had to take a barrier exam, and it was a pass or fail, and if you failed it, you had to take it again your senior year, and if you failed it your senior year, you could not graduate, like period. And so we all took it my junior year.
What does that entail though? What is the exam?
So you have to sing 2 songs, you have to do 2 monologues, you have to dance, and you have, I think, and an interview process. So I did it my junior year. First of all, I'm a very crappy dancer. Dance was a really hard part of college for me. I failed ballet once.
That still blows my mind that you had to dance and that you failed ballet. Because, one, I would have failed ballet too. But the fact that, like, that's an actual thing that you did in college, like, that's so cool and also crazy.
I took so many dance classes, every type of dance, tap, jazz, lyrical, musical theater dance, ballet, like crazy. Anywho's it, did the barrier exam. It went really poorly. I'm not going to say, I was kind of debating on if I should say what was said to me on the pod. I think it's a little too personal, but let's just say some really harsh things were said to me.
Ouch.
And it's hard because in theater, it's very personal. When you're picked apart, it's about you. And anyway, one of the things said to me, which actually was not even the harshest thing, was about how my nystagmus was distracting and I needed to work on that, which I've talked about a lot because it's like I said, there were other things said that hurt me more actually than that, but that is so like disability related that it's like a story I just have to always tell. Anyway, I failed the barrier and it was horrible and it was just very stressful. I cried in front of them all. It was horrible.
I mean, seriously though, like same. I would have done the same thing.
And then for a year I had it hanging over me that I had to take it again.
Oh gosh.
And then if I failed that time, I would fail out of college. So luckily, I think we can all know how the story ends. I took it my senior year, and actually the really mean man that was in the room was not in there my senior year.
Oh, what a relief.
So, thank goodness. And I really like tried so hard, and I passed my senior year. Woohoo.
I'm so happy.
So do we want to go back and forth, like you say you're crappy and then I'll do my happy?
Sure, yeah. So my entire junior year was very stressful.
Can we talk about how they were both our junior year? That's funny.
I think a lot of junior years. It's
junior year is just the worst.
It's hard because like you're in your major and it tightens all around you and you're really like in your core courses. And I think it's when you can have a lot of like existential crises when you're a student and you're like, am I good enough for my core courses? Like, this is my whole major. Like, I'm doing bad in this. Like, am I gonna make it? So they were hard for different reasons. So fall of my junior year, I was in some really tough courses with some notoriously bad professors and tough instructors. I got one of my, like, I barely passed a course, okay? And it was just so difficult, and, like, the instructor was just not great at explaining, and I found the subject hard to understand, and so, like, I just really, really did not do well. But, like, I passed, and that's all I needed, and, so, you know, that along with another really hard course, and I was also like really, really like doubling down on trying to find an internship. In engineering, if you don't find an internship, it's sort of make or break for your career these days. You have to have that experience because people expect you to have experience before you come into industry. So it's tough, and so I really wanted to make sure I got a great internship between my junior and senior year. And I worked so hard. I had lots of technical interviews, which involved, I think they're a little bit silly, but like they ask you these really like technical questions about things that they teach you in school, like fundamentals of computer science theory, which again is silly just because software engineering, you don't really need to know that, but that's beside the point. But I that's the semester I interviewed at Microsoft and got rejected, and it was just like really a lot.
Oh my, yeah, it sounds like it. And
I was just busy all the time and crying all the time, and it was just so much. And then spring of my junior year, I ended up having some health and mental health struggles, which like I basically had a lot of my Crohn's disease being flaring up in new and unique ways, and it was like very like shattering for me. And I won't really get into why, but just there was a lot of also lingering trauma from I've talked about this before, but there was a lot of lingering trauma from between my high school and college. I ended up getting my entire large intestine removed. Talked about that on episode 6 if you want to hear the whole story, but like that was a lot, and it was traumatic and horrible, and I think just a lot of those memories were coming up, and it was just really, really hard to carry on. So that semester was difficult in new ways, and I was just so done with junior year as soon as it was over.
Yeah.
But,
Same.
Spoiler alert, I did get a really good internship, but it wasn't really on my own efforts. It's because I had made some good connections. So networking is really important.
Definitely. Yeah. I was not myself my junior year either. I was not very happy. So I understand that. It was, I mean, not the whole time. There were happy moments, but I remember my advisor was like, "You are not yourself." I was like, "Yeah, tell me about it." But happy. That's a good thing to get into. I had so many happy moments in college. My happy moment I chose is going to be like my major related, theater related, because my crappy was, and it just kind of goes together. But I will say I had a lot of great like friend moments too, and a lot of great like roommate, like bonding moments, and a lot of beautiful relationships I made. And I think that's what I'll take with me from college, really. But my freshman year, I got to do a lot of really cool shows in college, and I really enjoyed all of them in different ways. But my freshman year, I did a musical called the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, and it's such a fun musical comedy, and comedy is my favorite thing to do. And it was just one of those instances where the cast and the director and everything came together so beautifully, and everyone was so talented, and it was one of my first like college theater experiences, so it felt so exciting because high school, like, not everyone cares as much as you do, it's like, why don't these people care? But in college, like, everyone takes it so seriously, and it's like a real thing. And I felt so like happy to be in it my freshman year, and I had so much fun doing the role, and I remember saying, like, I would do this role forever and never get sick of it. I could do it for years and never stop, and I ended up, like, oh, I feel uncomfortable. I was going to say, I got an award for it, and it made me happy.
Yay,
but I hate
no, you're allowed to
saying
brag.
that.
This is our podcast.
That whole experience was so wonderful from beginning to end, and the people I got to work with, and so that was probably one of my biggest highlights of college, but there were so many good moments.
Yeah.
What about you?
I really loved my whole sophomore year. It was the first year I lived in my sorority's house, and I really had lots of fun being in my sorority. There were some stressful moments with like sorority politics, but
Oh, I'm sure.
yeah, you know, because it is a bunch of like, you know, 20-year-olds that are like running like a small organization. So there's gonna be some clashes in politics, but it was still really fun. It gave me a lot of leadership experience. I feel like I learned so much. I loved being in a house with so many other people. Like, it was a blast. And I really liked the classes I took, especially the spring of my junior year. I felt like I was like really doing something that I cared about, that I thought mattered. So it was like probably one of my best academic semesters anyway. Like, I think I made Dean's List, which I don't think I did almost any other semester, but like
That's amazing considering your major, especially. That's amazing.
yeah, you know what, like I didn't get a 4.0, but I didn't like I would say that I did pretty well in college, even though like that was pretty much the only semester I made Dean's List. But so I really enjoyed my sophomore year for both social and major related experiences. I also really liked the spring of my senior year. So at the end of engineering degrees, you generally take what's called a capstone design course. So it's basically like a semester or year-long design class where you make something pretty much from the ground up. And so since I was a game design focus, I was in a game design capstone, and I really loved that. It was so fun to work with my group. We made a cool game.
That's awesome.
We got
like you made a game. Like,
yeah,
just, like,
we got most polished game out of our class. Like, it was really
I love that.
We worked really hard on it, and it was a lot of fun. And I thought it was great. Like, I really liked that. And I took a summer term too. So I took my two remaining courses, and I graduated at the end of the summer my senior year a couple of years ago now. And my summer term was just really fun. Wow, I'm choking. And a swallow. My summer term was really fun, but you know, it wasn't really academically stressful. Like, I was kind of like tying up loose ends is how I felt, and I really enjoyed just like being able to have that moment. It felt kind of like a vacation, but it wasn't. I was still taking classes.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I mentioned briefly internships. So I know that you also had an internship. Like, when was it? How was it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, internships I don't think were quite as stressed in my major as they were for Cass, but we did have to have one to graduate, and at least one. A lot of people did 2 or 3, like every summer people would apply, and people would get I was talking to Cass about how people would get really snooty about, and I would always joke, like, unless you're studying with William Shakespeare himself, you're not good at, your internship isn't good enough. But anyway, a lot of people did internships. I did an internship my summer in between my junior and senior year, and it was actually a really not great experience. I was happy to get the internship because it was a company that I really respected, and I still do respect them, but the other interns I was working with made it a bad experience. And it was just very stressful, and it felt like a lot of the work kind of fell on me, and it wasn't super evenly distributed. But it was a lot of acting involved. We did a show that we toured to different schools. We threw a huge festival, a huge theater festival, and we did, like, we put together all this stuff. So it was fun. Like, the actual festival was really fun, but the there was a lot of drama and crazy things that I could go on. I had to take over a role with like one day. A girl dropped out, and I had to take over the lead role with one day to rehearse the show and learn it all. I was sobbing. I was hyperventilating, like with my script, trying to learn it, but also trying to put on this festival. It was crazy. But anyway, so I did that. I made it through. I somehow survived it, but it was not a super pleasant experience.
Yeah. Wow. There was definitely a lot of elitism with our internships too. It's like, oh, they're working at Google. Excuse me. I guess my internship at the local, like local whatever, or they're like a startup dude. It's like, oh, you're a startup dude. Like, yeah, a lot of people also had side projects in my field, which makes a lot of sense. Like, a lot of people will just, like, make apps and code things, and I was never much of a side project person. But, I just wanted to enjoy myself in college besides studying. I didn't want to do more work outside of classes for no credit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But some people are really drawn to that, and I totally get it. But, yeah, so, I did apply to a lot of those big names, and I didn't get them, but I did get, like, other names that I was still really proud to work at. Between my sophomore and junior year, I worked for Nationwide Insurance, which is headquartered in Columbus, so it was really cool. I got to stay in Columbus and work for Nationwide doing, like, web development things. And then between my junior and senior years, I lived in Seattle for 3 years. I worked for Expedia on their accessibility team, which kind of gave me it was like, the gateway experience to me learning about accessibility and kind of pursuing that as more of a career rather than just being a web developer, which is fine. But like, I wanted to do something more and maybe something more socially impactful. So I really, really loved living in Seattle. Honestly, like, given the changes in my health and my mental health the previous semester, there was a lot of tough moments living there. It was the most independent I had ever been up to that point, especially since I didn't have my family nearby. And so it was a little bit lonely, but Seattle had amazing transit. I love being independent, so I ventured and discovered new places, and I had a blast, but there were some really tough moments, and it also made me realize that I actually really like living pretty close to home. Yeah. That community is really hard to come by, but it was such a great experience. I still really miss Seattle, but I don't think I'd ever move back there and live there. The internships themselves were really good. I definitely learned a ton from both of them, both about my field and myself. I think they were very growing experiences, and I'm really glad that I did them and I had them, and I was able to say like, hey, I had this experience, and then I was able to get my job working at Chase into my senior year. So I was really, really happy about that and very, very grateful.
Yeah. So then about graduation, we finished, we both graduated. That's exciting. Sure. Any kind of graduation story or anything you'd like to share about graduation?
Right. So going back to my previous point, I started work. So since I took the summer term, I graduated in August, and actually, oh my gosh, I graduated exactly 2 years ago.
Oh, you scared me. I was like, what happened?
Today.
2 years ago today.
Yeah.
Congrats.
That's really wild. So anyway, what was even more wild though was that I was starting in this program for early career students, fresh out of college. And we were supposed to start at the end of July, assuming most students graduated in either December or May. But I was finishing late. So I actually started working a few days before I technically graduated from college. So I started working on the 1st, then graduated college on the 4th. But I the 31st of July, I finished my finals. It was bam, 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 right back forth. I moved into my first apartment alone that week. There was a lot happening at the same time. Yeah. So August graduation is nothing insane. Spring graduation gets to graduate in the shoe where they play football, but I also like didn't want to sit in the sun for 4 hours, so I'm kind of glad that I didn't graduate in the shoe. So it was really chill, low key, and I was just really happy to be finished and start my career. What about you?
Yeah, my senior class, I think it was after we graduated, maybe before, after, I think it was after. We did a senior showcase in New York, and we went up there and performed for agents, and they can choose to sign you and things like that, and we took classes, and I was kind of not in the right headspace. I kind of needed a break from theater after I graduated. It kind of it became, it was a hobby my whole life that became more of a job, and I kind of just needed a break. Luckily, I did end up finding my way back to theater, but I wasn't in a great headspace when I graduated about it, and so graduation was kind of like bittersweet, but I was I was proud of myself that I had made it through, and I'm happy to have the major I have. So we have 10 questions. A game! Now, we are already an hour and 3 minutes on this pod, but I think we can make this rapid fire.
I think we can make this rapid fire.
We can do 1 sentence answers for these.
Okay. You want to start?
I'll start. Did you ever pull an all-nighter?
Believe it or not, no. There are a couple of nights that I stayed up until about 4 a.m. and then woke up at 8, but I did not ever pull an official all-nighter.
Exact same. I did not, but I did stay up really late. Okay. Oh, wait. You need to read this.
Yes.
Next one.
So, did you ever do something against the rules of campus or rite of passage?
My friends and I ran through the fountain. The fountain I talked about. It's just this big fountain in the middle of campus, and you're not supposed to run through it, but we did.
So I feel like the thing that I would herald as the thing ended up being canceled the year after my freshman year, and I never got to do it, which was our official campus thing that you weren't supposed to do, was jump into our fountain, and specifically on the week of the big game against Michigan. So we were not allowed to do that anymore, which was kind of a bummer, and then they reconstructed it. So I didn't get to.
Oh, that's sad. Okay, did you ever stock up on any dining hall food?
Oh, yes. So the dining plan was whack, in my opinion. And so I ended up feeling like I outsmarted the system, and I could buy stuff at the convenience store. So I would legitimately buy just pints of ice cream with my leftover dining points, and I would stick them in my freezer, and I'd have tons of ice cream.
That's smart. I don't think I did, but I honestly don't really remember.
Okay, did you ever sleep on campus, which you totally already mentioned?
I think every day. I'm not kidding. It was kind of I was known as the person who sleeps in the theater building. I was sleeping publicly right there on the bench in the middle, and everyone kind of knew, oh, that's Casey asleep. That's her nap time. It was wild.
Yeah, I fell asleep in all sorts of buildings. I would find everywhere. A little corner and cozy up. I had this system where I would loop my arms through my bag so no one would take my backpack with my laptop in it, and then I would hug around my dog, and so then we would just fall asleep in a little pile.
Hey, same. I did it all the time. All right, did you ever cry publicly on campus?
So much. I cried in Starbucks, I cried in buildings. I'm pretty sure I outwardly cried in class, after my first calc exam that, of course, I failed or didn't do well or something. I walked out of the room in a flurry, crying. So, very freshman move of me.
I cried, probably 50 times on campus, maybe even more. I cried in the bathroom, the stairwell, in front of people, just in the lobby. I remember once I hadn't gotten all my scholarship hours yet, or my lab hours yet, or whatever. And this guy I knew, he was like, I really don't think you're gonna get all those hours. I don't think there's any way. And I just broke down.
Yeah.
So I cried a lot.
Inside, outside, anywhere,
in the middle
anytime.
Of voice lessons.
It's a good time
at the piano.
For a cry.
Yeah, always crying.
Did you ever get any late night food delivery?
Kind of. We lived in this little townhouse my last 3 years of college, and the food delivery people could never find it. But back then, and I say back then because it was 10 years ago, we didn't have DoorDash, Uber Eats. The only thing we could order was pizza. Yes, that was the only thing we could order was pizza. But we did order pizza a decent amount. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, so I discovered Postmates my sophomore year, and again with the pints of ice cream, I would have them deliver pints of ice cream to the sorority house, and someone would shout out my name because they knew it was for me.
It's your eggs and your ice cream.
My eggs
Don't
and my
take
ice
away
cream.
her eggs and her ice cream.
We also had like a cookie shop that could deliver cookies until like 3 a.m. So like I did that.
Love it.
I did that mostly for friends though. When they were like crying, I would send them cookies.
Did you ever have a nightmare roommate situation?
Yes, I did, and I will keep it really, really brief. I moved in with a girl my freshman year, and she knew me before, but she I don't know, there was a big shift in her when we went to college, and she actually was bullying me for my ostomy, and it was actually one of the worst experiences I've ever had with anybody.
That's horrible.
And she was saying like it was unsanitary, and it was gross, and it was smelly, and it was not any of those things, but we had to have the RA come in, and it was just really humiliating for me because it was like shortly after my surgery, and I was just trying to, get used to everything, and I was just so humiliated. But she ended up
What a miserable person.
Yeah, she was really terrible.
No,
but she ended up just like randomly moving out halfway through this whole situation, and so I was really glad I never really had to deal with it.
Yeah, I am really, really lucky. I never had a bad roommate. I've had only 4 roommates throughout my life, but they've all been like the most lovely, and I'm still like great friends with all of them to this day, and they were great.
Yeah, that's really great. I'm so glad that you had a good experience.
Sorry you didn't.
Oh no, it's okay. I had some good experiences too. Like I really did. I loved some of my roommates that I lived with.
Yeah.
Okay, were you ever saved by the curve?
Probably, but I don't have a specific memory that really stands out. But I'm pretty sure in some of my gen eds, maybe. What about you?
Senior year, I took a course in computer networking, which is actually, I think, one of the hardest courses I ever took. It was very difficult, and I did not think I was going to pass. And I somehow wound up with like a B+ or something, and I was shocked.
Hey.
So definitely saved by the curve.
Saved by the curve. Saved by the curve in the nick of time.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever have a really embarrassing moment?
So I think it was more funny to me, but my embarrassing moment I'm thinking of is, the semester that I mentioned that I was really struggling with my mental health and with some health related things, I was taking this math course. It was very, we had to write mathematical proofs. It was, kind of a hard class, and I worked really really, really hard in that class, but our professor was, very, very dry math guy, and he knew something was going on with me, and I went to office hours a lot to have a lot of, help, and I ended up just outright saying, I was trying to explain what was going on with my health, and I was like, yeah, so basically, I had my colon removed 3 years ago, and I just said it outright, and he was baffled. He was like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I'm so happy to not have a colon anymore. And he was so uncomfortable, but it was so funny to me.
I love that. Oh my gosh, you just made me remember another one though, not the one I had. I'll make it really quick. I'll do 2 really quick. One of them, my monocular fell out of my hand and rolled across the entire room, and I just thought that was embarrassing because I had to get up and find it. But another one, you're gonna die. I was walking home, and luckily it was kind of not a lot of people were around, but this guy kept yelling at me hey, and I was ignoring him because I had thought he was being creepy or trying to talk to me. I didn't know, so I was ignoring him. Yeah. He was like, hey, come to find out, he was trying to tell me that my skirt was hitched up under my backpack and I was flashing the world. But luckily I had a leotard on, so it was a little better than having underwear because it felt less revealing, but they probably thought it probably was my underwear, and I am embarrassed that I'm even telling that story. But
no, that's so funny. And that's really nice of them to try and tell you.
It was a quintessential embarrassing moment. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Oh, terrible.
Okay, and then last one, a time where you really felt like you were exactly where you needed to be.
Yes, so my you know, throughout college, you have times where you doubt yourself, or, you know, there are going to be people that love what you do and don't like what you do. But I had this professor who I really looked up to. She went to the Yale School of Drama, and she's been in a lot of things, and she was just very, like, successful and smart. And I really looked up to her. And I did this monologue once, and she, like, in her class, you know, and then a few hours later, she, like, pulled me aside in the lobby as I was walking somewhere else in the lobby of the building, and just really, like, told me that she really enjoyed it, and it was so nice, like, just for her to take that time to really tell me that. And she was like, I don't know what made it stand out to me, but it did, and it just made me feel like, oh my goodness, I can do this, you know, and like this person I really respect is validating that, and so it was like a really great moment that kind of wasn't that big of a deal, but meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I think, like, the fall of my senior year, I was taking this course called Principles of Programming Languages, and we had this really big project, and I feel like it's super hard to explain, but basically, I don't even know, we made, like, an interpreter for a programming language. I don't even know how to say that simply, but, like, I worked really, really, really hard on this project, and I thought it was, like, the coolest, wildest thing that we were doing, and I, like, was so proud of myself. And I really liked the professor in that course, and I just felt, like, really good about the work that I was putting forth. And then also later that semester, I ended up, like, interviewing and getting my job that I currently have at Chase, and, like, it kind of just made me feel like, yeah, I did it. I did what I was supposed to do in college. I went and I got a degree, and now I have a job. And I was just, like, so, like, I don't know, overjoyed and, like innerly satisfied that, like, I did it. I made it through, and I finished, and I did what I needed to do, and I was really, really happy.
Yes, you definitely. You've had such a successful career, and I can't wait to see where it goes. And so we both really had a great college experience, and we hope that if you are going to college, that you maybe could, you know, feel more prepared by listening to this. And if you're not going to college, maybe you just enjoyed hearing some of our stories, but we hope you liked it.
Yeah, take some risks, try some new things, and ultimately, like, do your best and have a good time. And, like, I hope that, this was fun, as evidenced by our hour and plus episode that we just made.
It's fine.
We really enjoyed having college
Our last
experiences.
school one was long. Our last school one was the long one, too. We just, when we get off about school, apparently we can't stop.
It's fun, you guys.
But anyway,
it's fun.
Thank you all for listening. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.